Oh, all right. Let's see. I need to get my stuff out. Got a high flow. We're waiting for anybody to show up. And then we're going to definitely need some black, right? So I'm going to need some white. Thought I should touch this one up just a bit before I. Now it's been a bit since I started this, and mostly finished it a while ago. But I thought, whoa, where are you going? Paint box. Let's get this stuff first, I guess. So that is the plan for today. Where's that color at? Over here somewhere, maybe? Looks like that jar. Where is my jar of yellow ochre? It's not over here. Not in here. It's a mess in there. Needs to get cleaned up in the drawer. Stir. It's not there. Oh, sorry, maybe it's there. It is. There's the yellow ochre. Found it. I found it. We got our black, we got our yellow ochre, a little burnt umber, probably a good idea. Just do a little touch up so I don't get too much paint out. Sorry, the retarder medium, that's what we want. And yeah. Our yellow. Cad yellow. Engine yellow. Let's see. Nowhere to be seen, so I'm not sure where the sound's coming from. But cad bread. And the blue. I think that's everybody we need for now. Maybe the green. Green light, I think, is what we want. And that should complete our little rainbow over there on the side. Scoot that over. Some people to show up tonight. I know it's a weekday tonight. Let's just scoot that up here. maybe scoot this over just a little bit. So scoot that over a little bit. There we go. I think that's a better spot for everybody. Put that over there. And let's get our paintbrushes out. All right, so I think the big thing that I noticed when I was looking at this is this needs to pop out a little bit more. This could sit back a little bit more. I think if I were just like lighten this whole thing up a little bit. So we've got this like intense atmospheric perspective back here, and I think if I introduced some of that into here, we kind of push that back just a little bit more. That's what I'm thinking here. There's just some little edges of things I could use a little cleanup here and there. This is probably too bright for that because it's a certain brightness, but it's brighter over here than it is over there, which you don't want to do. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about here is, I think we'll start with that just because it's a big thing. And see how that goes. Let's see, some blue. I don't want it to be too intense in its color. Probably take a minute before I can find the exact right color I'm looking for here. But we will get there. Let's see if I just drop a little bit of this on here. It's like some lots of tents out there. All right. Actually, this would be okay. Go from there. So I don't hesitate to say hello. Sorry, I forgot to drop the text in there. There we go. I almost forgot about that. Yeah, I think that helps pushing that back a little bit. Good evening. Been sitting on this one to finish it up for a while. I recognize that It had some kind of issue. I wasn't sure what it was, but now that I've here for a bit, I probably should extend this out too. But I recognize that I needed to update it in some way. So I put together a tent that I can work over it and go from there. That's helping for sure. Good evening, good evening. Definitely helps push that back. I'll need some more work than that, but I'll start with this, I think. I guess I should turn the chat on. That's probably just in case I'm missing something. I just thought about. That's where the sound's coming from. Let's turn on. Let's come over here and realize I forgot to add this stuff over here, so just in case anybody's chat's muted. Thunderstorm. I needed one of these for a while. Alright, looks like it's working. It's working. It's a good start. Always appreciate a good thunderstorm. Good evening. Those coming in. And looking at this image, I'm like, yeah, I need to push this thing back. So that's what we're doing tonight. I spotted a few things I wanted to clean up in this picture, so starting off with those things first, and then doing some small touch-ups. Hopefully call it done. Alright, introduce some more of these intense colors in here. Lightning, huh? You okay, puppy? It's okay, Bosh. I know, boom booms, huh? Alright, well, that's good. Sometimes the boom booms bother him, or they have historically. Let's shift in direction there, I think. Be careful. There we go. That's starting to work a little better. Sorry, just trying to focus a little bit here. I realized this was overwhelming things a little too much. So I wanted to push this trunk back. Either that or I was going to do some things with the main figure, and I figured I would start with this first before getting into that. Hopefully that makes sense. I figured this would be simpler than the main figure first, so. That makes sense. Things that artists worry about, right? Not normal, well-adjusted people. Let's see. Yeah, definitely feels a lot better pushing that back. I mean, I like the tree shapes and things in there. I don't want to lose any of that, but good evening. How's it going? Was looking at this. Well, yeah, I know to come back to. I've been super busy. Um, Working on the teaching site stuff, uh, reworking its design and all that. So I've been pretending to be a copywriter and graphic designer for the last month and a half. So I was looking at this. I was like, I have some things I can touch up here. So I thought I would do that first. So I push in the contrast back on this guy here to start with. And so I thought that would be a good plan for today. Mine sitting. I could put it in the bathroom. um, there's so much good stuff coming out. I'm really, really surprised. I'm happy to see it, but it's just like I haven't read it yet, though. I did pick it up. I think it came out last week. I think something like that. Um, yeah. Um, yeah, I always wondered what happened to it because it seemed like he disappeared. I guess he was sick for a long time, from what I understand. I don't know him at all, of course. I just have a bunch of the old Max books. I forget that second series he did about it was a Max kind of spin off that he did for a while. Um, but I think it's definitely a magazine worth supporting. Um, There was actually a whole bunch of stuff that came out this week, that I've been tracking with last week too. Um, and then I'm looking forward to some stuff that I know is coming down the pipe. Let's see. It definitely feels a lot better. Sinks back, reducing its contrast both in value and in color. And that's definitely, I think, making the difference here. So saying Michael Whalen, who's a really great book cover artist. He's been active, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I think he's mostly retired now, but he posts over on Cara, the Cara app, Cara. He pulled everything off of Instagram and Twitter. Well, I think he might be on Blue Sky too, but he's been posting a lot of process stuff and things. And that's always interesting to check out. But have any opinions? Actually, I've been looking at that too for my car. There's a capsule projector I'd like to get. I've been looking to see. Been looking into used ones. These have batteries in them. They're pretty. Like the newer ones cost like $400 or $500, which is more than I want to pay. But there's like the original one, which would fit perfect inside of my car, projected onto the back hatch door on the inside at night. It's the Anker Anker Nebula. Uh, they've got some different editions out, but the one I go to be it's like I think the one I want to get's like it came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and they have newer ones that are like too much larger, brighter screens. Um, so that's the one that I've been looking at for what I would want it for. Um, so um, that yeah, I'd want just to like project on the inside, maybe on the outside too, depending on the bug situation at night. But that's oh yeah. Um, so yeah, that's what I've been looking at is the Anchor Nebula capsule. Um, maybe it's maybe it's too many like van lifers were talking about it a few years ago. That got me interested in. I should probably check with one of my friends. Um, he's got like a van that he camps with his family in from time to time. Um, but see if he's looked at that at all. He's like big into the DIY stuff for his truck project, his camper, his van. Um, but see what he would say. But I think yeah, for backyard, I mean, if you're just looking at projectors, I mean, there's plenty of probably ones you can plug in. I'm looking at the battery powered thing myself, just because that's what I'm looking. That's what I would need. Um, or one at least I could plug into a USB-C outlet. I do have like regular 120 power for my some of my appliances. Try to keep that really limited just because it uses so much power in it. And yeah, I think I've heard that name BenQ, I think mentioned. I was looking at some reviews actually the other day, so must be something there. Maybe just summer. Um, so yeah, I was hoping to be done with all this website stuff like 2 weeks ago. And so we're gonna do a little summer sale next week, and this weekend hopefully try and get the last of that 5-course series all the way done. I started installing that. I was without my car for like 8 days because the mechanic was taking their sweet time with a basic inspection. They had to do like a little fix for me too, but it was like nothing. It was like a turned out to be a breaker issue. I had to replace the license plate light, and I was replacing it, but it wouldn't turn on, and I didn't think to check the fuse box, which turned out to be the culprit. So it cost me an extra, $50 to get it fixed. Um, I did get out to the movie theater. Did do that when we saw Hail Mary finally. Amazing what they did. It's a great film. How little they, low but relatively low budget compared to major CGI summer blockbusters made a ton of money, which is great to see. That kind of film doing that. Hopefully, it means there'll be more of that caliber. There's a bunch of stuff coming out too. I'm looking forward to. There's that. I can't remember what it's called, corridors or hallways. It's about like liminal spaces done by some 20-year-old YouTuber. I'm curious about that. And then there's the new Spielberg film. I'm hearing good stuff about that. Disclosure Day, I think it's called. I just watched the first episode of the new Spider Noir. That was good. First episode. They're all out, which is weird. You'd think like they would want to stretch it out, but they put them all out at once. So I thought it was. I originally thought it was a movie, but I guess you could watch it that way. It'd be like I can't remember how many episodes there are, 6 or 8 episodes. Um, so so those are like things I'm looking forward to. What else did I see recently? I like the Mall show. I watched that. That was really good. Mall Shadow Lord. They even did some like practical effects for a kids CG. Well, kids, teenage, I guess. It's still for older kids, I guess. But they actually did practical. Like George Lucas, like they've been all about Lucasfilm has been all about like the practical effects lately. Even in like that CGI cartoon, they did some interesting practical work in it. Um, yeah. Um, but yeah, the Shadow Lord show, yeah, like they built a physical miniature model for one of the scenes. They said in the article I read, they said it was actually cheaper and faster than building it on the computer. Um, backgrounds were like hand painted, like with oil paints, like the skyboxes and the deep backgrounds were. And then they had a scene where Maul has like some kind of vision, force vision or whatever, and they actually took the rendered 3D stuff and projected it on smoke to get the effect. Which I guess makes sense, right? It'd be a lot faster and cheaper than waiting around for something like that to render properly. Um, Speaking of projectors, right? Um, so that's kind of interesting that they're leaning. And I guess with I don't have any plans to watch it, but they did some similar stuff like Mandalorian and Grogu, where they've got like stop motion and of course all the puppets and sets. Um, but Yeah, so that's kind of all kind of interesting stuff that they would do that. Go to those. You would think they would just default to the computer. It's like one of the things I realized I was watching. I think it's been long enough that I haven't talked about it here, but I rewatched Close Encounters of the Third Kind a while back, like a month ago or whatever, and maybe sooner than that. I was actually just gonna watch like the opening scene because I wanted to look at the shot changes and things that Spielberg does in there, and so I ended up watching the whole thing. But one of the things that he does in there, though, well, I don't know what things that he does in there, but what I noticed was when I watched it was like how few people were in the credits, and I know they didn't credit everybody that worked on the film necessarily, but still, it was a pretty short list of credits. And then I looked it up, and they had spent $19 million on it in 1971 dollars, which works out to about 60 odd million today, maybe 65, 69 million. They made, I think, $299 million on it from a $19 million budget, which works out to nearly $1 billion today. On a so if you take today's dollars, $69 million film, they made nearly $1 billion on it. And I guess that's why Spielberg is king of the crop, right? Um, Even if he makes a stinker once in a while, it's you kind of stand up and pay attention. And that's like thing is like that film that was like a major budget at the time, and it's a visual effects heavy film, right? There's all the spaceships and the miniatures and the puppets and the sets and the locations and the background paintings and putting cows to sleep on the side of the road, tranking them up. It was like a major production. And today, to make that movie, they'd have to spend $200-300 million just to like get it out the door, bare minimum, and there'd be like a couple thousand people worked on it. Um, so you look at like a lot of the films today, like just like where does all that money go? Or the games, they're talking about these games where they're spending 200-300 million dollars on a game and years in development, and I feel like there's got to be some kind of scam somebody's running. Um, it's makes me question what's going on. Um, yeah, if you go look at like the credits at the end of Close Encounters, and it's like it's shockingly short. Um, yeah, pushing that back, I think, is definitely the right decision. It used to be dark like this, and wasn't working. I could tell. It's not perfect yet, but it feels a lot better. All right, nobody there. I'm sure this is muted. So, um, yeah, I was just like, I don't know what they're doing. You know, you think about these movies they make now, and it's just like, where did all the money go? Went somewhere, right? Went into somebody's pockets. And I'm just wondering, like, are they using this to like, fleece their investors and the banks or whatever, or they got some kind of weird system they're working out? You know, it's like they're barely squeezing profits out of a lot of these films. Like even like the Avatar movies, right? They've all made a lot of money, but they also cost a lot to make and to market. So yeah, it's just weird. I don't know exactly what it all means, but I can certainly speculate. But I don't have any insight on it. Um, yeah, because you think the idea with like success on a film, like especially a film series, say like Marvel movies or DC or whatever, is you want to take those profits and kind of fold them into the next film and kind of expand your way forward. Um, that's what I would think. Hello, right over there. This is acrylic. So someone's asking over on Twitch what kind of paint this is. It's mostly heavy body acrylic. I'm actually trying to transition over to soft body. I had assumed heavy body meant like it has had more paint in it, but it turned out I was completely wrong about that. Um, so I'm kind of gradually using up my heavy body stuff and then replacing it with the softer stuff. Heavy body just means it's thicker, and apparently, so yeah, I like wash too. And actually, acrylic is actually the medium for painting that I probably have the least experience with. So I'm pretty familiar with oil painting. Actually, very familiar with wash painting. I feel really good about that. Um, Watercolor I'm okay with. It's just it's kind of backwards thinking for me to a certain degree. And then unless I'm being really sketchy with it. But acrylic I've kind of avoided for a long time, which I've talked about in here before, because I didn't like it as a student. I got to thinking that, well, you know, I had to teach it last fall in a class. I got thinking, well, maybe the problem wasn't the paint. Maybe it was me. Because we were looking at these different acrylic painters and illustrators in my class, like Jean-Jude Pollinkar or James Christensen or Michael Whalen, among others. And I was looking like, maybe I should give acrylic another shot. Maybe, I just didn't know how to paint back then. And I didn't understand color mixing and color temperature and how to layer up paints and a bunch of other things that I think are, you know, things I've learned over time and with some really great instructors. Maybe I should give it another chance. And glad I did. Like, not just suffer through the class, but really take the opportunity to really dive in somewhat deep and actually understand it. Well, y'all missed out on the thunderstorm. They're pretty good one just a minute ago. Well, a little bit ago. All right, Bosch. Rumors abound. Oh yeah, for the film industry. Yeah, I'm using a technique that's kind of similar. It's similar to egg tempera painting. Something I see James Christensen do. Like I actually have these up here just for my own reference. These are ones that I've done kind of relatively recently that are all acrylic. I'm gonna bring it up a little bit closer, I guess. So a similar kind of thing here. And then there's this one right there. And then something a little more blue. Yeah, it's a tempera style, and basically you kind of crosshatch the paint over itself. And if you look up James Christensen paintings, he's been dead for a while, but he's famous for like his paintings of dwarves and fairies and things like that. And he used this kind of approach where you basically kind of crosshatch color on top of colors, and has really nice, I think, a nice effect that I am liking. Yeah, so rather than treating it like oil paint, it's a different different sensibility on here. Which also kind of goes into my love for dealing with detail. So these are like really small paintings, but they take some time to do because I've got all this detail packed in. So the same comics, no. But these were what happened was is the first page, which I don't have up here, it's a little rougher. But I saw this guy. He did this thing where he would take like I've seen it from other artists too in the past. It's not like a new thing, but he basically takes a couple pieces of reference and then just makes something like a character design. So I saw something like that over an ArtStation. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll try that with acrylic. And that's where I got that robot fungus guy at. So this guy right here. So I found some fungus reference and some robot stuff, and I kind of just mixed them up. And I was just actually only going to paint the robot, and then I was like, well, I could use a background. So I did that too. And then I was like, well, let's try that with some figures, like human figure things. So that's what these are. So there's a total of 4 of these human-based ones. I've just got the 3 up here, this one and these other 2. I wasn't as happy with the first one I did, which, doesn't shouldn't surprise anyone. If you haven't really done much of something for a while. I'm on YouTube and Twitch and Kick all at the same time. So the person I'm talking to is over on Twitch. The My Art Professor label over there, as opposed to Instagram, which is the Rainland Studios one, since that's my larger account on Instagram. But yeah, but I wanted to start doing some concept pieces for my comic project. So I started working on some thumbnails and things for that a while back, and I got busy. I've got this teaching site, and I was like, I really want to have some stuff built for it so I can start, promoting it more and finish some stuff on there. And, be a little more focused on that rather than just kind of letting it sit there. So I've spent a bunch of time over the last month, like reworking the website and um, putting together promotional materials and just a whole list of things. And that's the myartprofessor.com site. So, yeah, it's not the same universe, but my plan is to start doing some pieces based off of that. Hopefully, in the evenings that are acrylic. I want to do a kind of a set of illustrations similar to what you would see from like a Doug Chang or Ralph McQuarrie. Doug Chang's just mentioned because he's still kicking around, but like in the vein of like a Ralph McQuarrie or a Doug Chang acrylic type concept pieces. I was doing some sketches the other day, and I might start with just some like simple environment type pieces rather than the fully narrative ones that I originally looked at. And just to kind of warm up into it a little bit. So that's been keeping me busy the last little while. So I haven't been online streaming and all that in about I think a little over 3 weeks. Um, and I thought I was going to be done with everything like 2 weeks ago. So I was like, oh yeah, like I've got my little production list I've made. I'm cranking along really well, and I'm going to be done so fast. And then, you know, just takes time to do things. So, but I'm almost done. I've got like a small number of things that I think I should be able to get done tomorrow, the day after. And I actually showed a friend of mine, he's a professional comic book artist, has been for a long time, and my pages, and he had some good suggestions of things I should try out. So definitely want to do that. He recommended I maybe try and make my characters a little bit more iconic. So cut back on some of the details and things I've been putting into them just to make it read a little more easy. But he said definitely don't like cut back on the detail in the environments. So I don't know that I'll make him cartoony like he does. He's the illustrator for Atomic Robo, which they've been only doing it through Kickstarter for a long time now. I think publishing it that way. They were like two of their issues of their comic book were the first comics on Comixology. He and the guy he works with, who's the author. So he's definitely a good source for helpful information. He teaches at the school that I teach at full time as well. So it was definitely a very thoughtful commentary he had. All right, I'll leave that alone for a bit. I wanted to push this up. I might even lighten this up a little bit. I definitely wanted to lighten this thing up a little bit more. I guess I should get this down with my retarder medium. Titanium white. I got some of that right here. Look at that. Titanium white. Yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing with, well, it's like with any comic book. The problem with Kickstarter, though, is, like, they can take time. I even have a friend who never fulfilled his. It wasn't a comic book, but it was like some fine art stuff. It was to fund a residency out in Germany, and he never fulfilled it. I bugged him about it a couple times, but um, but I did Kenneth Rocafort's stuff last year. I know he's got one he's got running right now. He did on Indiegogo originally, and then he switched over to Kickstarter. I guess Indiegogo's got new owners or something. But art is really beautiful. It is completely unreadable. Like, the English in it is so bad. This one character should be good enough. Oh, look, we got ourselves a bot over there. Twitch. Let's see. Where's the Twitch page at? You are. Let's ban you. I guess it's not deleting over there. Let's see. It's delete. Oh my gosh. My dog decided to pop underneath the. But that definitely feels a lot better knocking that back. It might be too much, but I think I definitely wanted to sit behind the character a little bit more. This I probably did a little bit of that, but not as much over there. Yeah, I've thought about coming up with some kind of. So my story, this guy, he ventures out into this wilderness, right, of this planet they're on. My thought was maybe along the way he picks up, like, maybe he runs into like a nest of some kind of creature, and ends up killing it, and turns out it was a mother, and there was a baby animal in there or something, and he brings that along with him. Um, so I have thought about that as an element of the story. I don't know what the creature would look like necessarily. Um, and I also did, what's his face? Mark Miller's Psychic Sam, and it wasn't very good, honestly. I've liked some of Mark Miller's stuff, but not everything. But that one was not very good. I even did the artist edition of that. The black and white. John Romita Jr. is illustrating it. I just, I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't. Did I watch Raised by Wolves? I did. I kind of half liked the first season, and the second, I think it's the second one, right? Was the last one. And I was just very confused by what was going on. um, it wasn't. It just felt like it was just like a lot of random stuff. Um, yeah, but I remember when I was coming out, it was like, oh, this looks interesting, and I just thought it was really, really confusing. Trees turning into flying snakes, and um, I guess it was kind of art housey. But I was just kind of confused the whole time I'm watching. Like, what is going on with this show? Um, but I think it probably did that to a lot of people because they didn't continue it. I think it could have been helped by some kind of more ex exposition about what was going on in it. Um, but I did watch it. Um, yeah, I was just kind of like I didn't understand like what I was supposed to be getting out of it. There's been shows I know that have been popular that I watch. And I'm like, I don't get why people like this. Um, it's like the characters. I never felt like the characters had really strong motivations in that film, in that Raised by Wolves show. I remember I was watching. People were like, "Oh, the Succession show, you gotta watch it. It's so great." And I watch it. I'm like 3 or 4 episodes in, and I'm like, I don't know why do the characters care about what they're doing? Like, why does it, like, what's their motivation? Why are things happening the way they're happening? Like, I understood the story. It's just like, um, I just didn't get why they cared. You watch a show like Pluribus, where oh yeah, you understand all the characters' motivations, even the ones that don't talk very much. There's the guy from the character from Argentina who makes his way north, and he doesn't really say anything, but they communicate what he cares about and why really really clearly. Um, and then yeah, I couldn't tell like with the Raised by Wolves, like are they supposed to be on different planets? Is it supposed to be the future, or is it some kind of thing about the past? It just didn't make any sense to me. I'm sure there's like a good explanation somewhere, but it didn't feel like it was in the story. Um, there's other shows like I remember like people are like, oh, you gotta watch Peacemaker. It's so great, and I watched like 3 or 4 episodes of it, and I'm just like, I don't. Why is this so great? Am I like why? First of all, John Cena is not that good of an actor. He's not very funny or interesting. Just kind of bland. And then I know he's popular, but I don't get it. Um, maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't know, but maybe watching him bend over backwards for the Chinese Communist Party uh, was kind of the end for him for me because he said Taiwan exists. Yeah, well, like I know like the plot of Saved by the Raised by a Wolf show. Like they're on this other planet. There's this contention between the religious people and the non-religious people, and the non-religious people are running a crusade against believers and whatever sun god they're into. And there's a big war, and it kind of destroys the whole planet. And then they flee and they go to this other planet. And then there's kind of an implication that the humans kind of go back and forth between the other planet and this one, because like there's evidence like there's like the source of the religious beliefs come from that planet, something like that. So I understood all of that. I just don't understand why like anybody cared. It was like very vague. The pit, yeah, I've heard good things about the pit. I haven't watched it. I was thinking earlier, I watched the Mall Shadow Lord show. That was actually I really enjoyed that. I thought that was pretty good. Um, so and again, I was saying, you know, they did some interesting stuff effects wise in that where um they did like some physical like physical miniature props for it. It's like there's a scene where the ship gets blown up. Persons come to rescue them, and the ship gets blown up in the process. But they they built a physical like miniature set, like a little, physical little ship to film for this 3D animated cartoon. They did some other interesting kind of physical effects into that too. Yeah, Milk Robot. Yeah, there's a bunch of weird stuff in that show. I just didn't. I think a lot of people were confused by it. I don't think I was the only one. I feel like I've got, you know, a reasonable amount of intelligence that I can follow a story, but I just think I think they were going out on a limb there a lot. And that was the brother of what's his face, right? That or the son or whatever of what's the name of that director? Some kind of relative of his was the one that was actually making it in consultation with him. I can't remember his name. Alien director, you know, it's pretty famous. Yeah, but, you know, like the thing with the show too is the religious stuff is very is like similar to like Christianity, but not quite, which also made it confusing because it made it feel like I was supposed to like, you know, compare it to this one thing or feel like it was came from that one thing or that one thing came from it, but it was just I was just confused. Um, um, but I did watch the whole thing, so you know they got the watch time out of me because I'm just like they gotta like inform us about like really what's going on here at some point. I like that actor who's he's the crazy guy, the crazy blue eyes, who's in that I think Vikings show. It's that Netflix I think, which was pretty good up until the point he left the show. Um, I think in the Viking show he gets like thrown into a pit of vipers or something when they kill him. Ragnar I think was his name in the show. I like that show. There's a whole scene where they've got this Christian missionary friend, and they want to pay him this high honor by sacrificing him to Odin or whatever. And he's this missionary's like, I don't want to do that. It's all right with you, all the same, you know. I appreciate the honor, but so I'm not really into that whole human sacrifice thing. He kind of plays a similar character in that um, Vikings show. The show started off, I think, pretty interesting, and then it kind of devolved into like typical medieval stuff. Like some of their clothes got really fancy and whatnot. They had to like take the show outside of Scandinavia. You know, they travel the world and they attack Paris or something at some point. Most of it's happening after that character had left the show. I might be mixing up two Viking shows a little bit, but the names. Yeah, I think that adds some really nice atmosphere back here. It's just really a little bit flat. So I am glad I did that. Let this sit for a bit. The other ones I'm pretty happy with where they're at. I think one of them I would tweak, but I think it's worth just moving on. The blue one. Part of the problems are compositional with it. Like it's okay. This one right here. Just a bit of a mess, I think, in terms of the compositional structure. They didn't really plan it out, I just kind of painted it. Yeah, but I'd like to get back to the comic book project, so I've got some of these website things I want to get done. I'll be promoting it a bunch next week. We're a little tuition sale on my teaching site next week. And then hopefully this week I can get started on finishing up the last project of that 5-part series. And jump back into some comic stuff while prepping to do at least one more course this summer, maybe a couple. Been trying to decide which one to do because I've got recordings and stuff from class for like the concept class I've been teaching here, which I think would be really great. Would be a good follow up to the perspective class. It's like a viz dev project that I've been teaching and uses some of the same techniques and things, but it's more digital based. And then the and then so that'd be the concept one, but I was thinking about the figure one because I've taught figure drawing for a long time, and I have a bunch of videos and stuff I recorded for COVID, the COVID era. May it never return. But I did a bunch of recordings for that. As a whole, basically, so students could do a lot of self-learning and reduce the amount of time they had to spend like sitting on Zoom. And so that wouldn't be hard to do, even if I sat down and re-recorded everything. I've taught figure drawing so long that it's just a matter of like building it out. It'd be reference based, but I'd show how to like do it at a live figure drawing session too. Maybe an acrylic painting class. I think I've got enough chops that I could teach how to do what I'm doing here. Maybe start with like a Zorn palette type thing, simple 3-color palette, and then teach that, and then do kind of expanded palettes. But I do want to like get into the comic project, so I want to do some tests based off of what the feedback I got from this Scott Wegner fellow, the Atomic Robo illustrator. You're saying like maybe try to make the characters more iconic and maybe cut back on some of the line work on the characters, which I think is good feedback. Took a while to come up with something like to really tell me. We're sitting there chatting. But he felt like the storytelling was all really strong. You could tell exactly what was happening, so nothing was really confusing, which is good. So yeah, I could make a better Raised by Wolves, right, based off of that feedback. I do feel like maybe the character designs are a little bit generic, so I was thinking about revamping them to some degree. Nothing extreme. It was just more like, trying to make it less. So I was looking for this kind of blend between like Sid Mead and like Vietnam War era stuff, and I think I can push that a little bit more. Um, so that's what I'm thinking with that. Just to rework that a little bit better. So I'd like to really get into that, get that first issue done. Well, I want to revamp the pages, maybe the outfit, and then I want to get that pitch out to places. So the idea is I want to kind of rework some of the pages, get it colored, get it lettered, and then get that out the door to probably start with image and then look at maybe some of the imprints there, or um, Boom. I think Mad Cave's doing some interesting stuff. Might be worth talking to them. Everybody says steer clear of IDW just because they got a lot of wacky stuff going on, business wise. Um, but it does seem like Boom's doing a bunch of good stuff. Something that we're talking to. I've seen that too. I don't know. I'll have to look at that because I do like watercolor. But actually the thing that I've been messing with more lately was, well, before I took a little break here, was the airbrush thing. And I still want to keep practicing at that. I'm kind of treating the acrylics here also to a certain degree like a little bit like the oil painting effects that I get, where you can called scumbling and glazing. So scumbling is where you paint like a lighter color over a darker color. So you paint an opaque lighter color over a darker transparent color, and then glazing is transparency over something that's opaque. So like right now I'm like putting this little kind of grayish purple over these transparent blues. And it can add a lot of atmosphere very, very quickly. That's the technique, the old masters mastered. And so by kind of working that in, it leaves it there to a certain degree, but also pushes it back. But I have seen that kind of style too. I haven't experimented that much with it. Um, Part of it's because I'm a detail nut, but I can see like you're trying to do something more expressive. Like there are techniques I've seen where you use that, you kind of like blend a bunch of like bubbly colors and things together, let it drip and pull really, really thinly, and then you use that as like a basis for underlying texture of things. It's like almost like a choral effect. Um, what time is it? Anyway, 8:20. I don't get plenty of time. Um, But I'm really kind of more interested in this type of approach that I'm using here, with maybe some airbrushing on top for certain kinds of effects that I may want to do. Not in this one, but in other, like the concept pieces, that are a little larger, like for like a nice sky gradation and things like that. But I do like, like Bernie Fuchs is a great painter. He's a, an oil guy, but he had like that watercolory look to his stuff. So, um, so I definitely like that kind of thing. But like the environment sounds, yeah, yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that. Um, like I like looking at again, like people like uh, Ralph McQuarrie or Sid Mead, and kind of their approach to that. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. But, Ralph McQuarrie's like he's most famous for his Star Wars concepts. His original concept. They still like reuse his designs today. Like even in like Star Wars Rebels, the characters are all based off his original designs for the how the characters were supposed to look originally. So like Chewbacca was like, what's his name, Zeb or something like that in Rebels, and then but all the other characters, like they look more like his original designs for the what the series was originally going to be, and they kind of used them in this Rebels show, which I thought was interesting. I love graphite. I love all that stuff. So yeah, I've done like one of the artists I got to work with that I really wanted to in grad school was a guy named Stephen Assail, and actually even put me in one of his paintings. I'm in there twice. Um, but he does like these really amazing, like crazy detailed graphite pencil drawings, mostly graphite. He also uses it's a kind of a grease pencil to draw on top of the graphite to get it ultra black. Um, what are they called? Stabilo pencils, and it gets like these super dense blacks on the top of the graphite because it's a write anywhere pencil. So like a lot of times art students, they'll try to use graphite over pencil, over graph. They'll try to use, sorry, charcoal over graphite, and that just doesn't work, right? Because the stuff doesn't really stick very well to graphite. It's kind of greasy. But this looks like it's designed to write on like metal and glass and a bunch of other surfaces. And so, um, but so I learned to use that too. But I've done some pretty insanely detailed, long like figure drawings in the past. Like I spent like 40 hours on a single drawing or something. So But yeah, so yeah, I do want to like start doing some of those concept pieces. I thought just again, I did some rough sketches of like the planet and things like that. I've had some thoughts recently about it. Um, thought maybe some simple environment ones would be good. I was doing some like rough sketches for a narrative point that I do want to do still, but I thought it'd be good to like start with some environment because I want to start working a little larger, yeah, three times larger than this, which still isn't that big, but yeah, this is pretty small. It's like 6 by 9 inches or something like that, border to border. Yeah, the news item lately is Destiny. Um, Destiny 2. They're killing the game, which is interesting. I haven't played it in a long time, but it's upset a lot of people. The death of Destiny 2. Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, they've announced end of life service. So June 9th, they're doing a final update, and then it'll just be they won't be adding anything more to it. So there won't be any more expansions. There won't be any more content. Probably bug fixes and things like that, but nothing beyond that. Um, which is pretty wild because it's got they've had this other game they're doing, this marathon game, and there's like very like it's lost like 90% of its audience that it started with like a couple months ago. Um, it's settled down to like 10,000 players on Steam, which I guess is like 70% of its audience is on PC. Um, and the Dead Destiny game is actually beating it out in terms of player population. Um, so it's been interesting to watch. I stopped playing last the before the most recent set of expansions. One last fall, and then the recent one I stopped playing just before that because it looked like they were making it into like a chore simulator basically. And so I was like, that's a good spot for me to stop. Yeah, the marathon game does look. I mean, it looks interesting if you're. But it's like extremely competitive extraction shooter, um, where you're like losing your stuff all the time that you earn per se in the game, and you know, I don't really play games all that often. It's been a while actually since I played any. And it's not that I don't like them or wouldn't mind playing more if I just have time, but thing is like I have enough like real challenging things to deal with in real life that I don't really look to games to level up my personal life challenges. I'm looking for something relaxing and enjoyable. Um, and Marathon just looks like you have to be like hyper focused, very competitive at all times, and just it just doesn't look very enjoyable to me. Um, I guess the entire game is being that way, and And again, I've just got enough real things that I'm doing, like, learning acrylic painting or airbrushing or working on my teaching site or, stuff like that. Um, Working on a comic book, learning storytelling. Like, I just feel like, virtual challenges are fine if you've got, time to kill. But I've only got so much, headspace for doing stuff. And, yeah, what's funny, they spent, I think, 7 years working on Marathon. Went through a bunch of different iterations over time. But when it came out, they had like 4 maps and like 4 or 5 character models for the characters you play. And like that was it. Suppose they spent like a couple $100 million making it. Was the big reason they were acquired by Sony was for that. It's just weird. It speaks to, like, we were talking earlier about what movies are costing to make. It's like, where's all this money going? I was talking earlier about I don't know if you were here or not for but about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I rewatched it recently, and I was watching. I was like, wait a second. At the very end, I'm like, wait, this list of credits is really really short. Like, you watch a movie now and you can sit there for like 20 minutes with the credits. And this one was like, it's like 5 minutes at the end of the movie. And I know it doesn't list everybody that was in there. Like, I didn't see Ralph McQuarrie's name, but he worked on designs for the ships. I know that. So, maybe even if you like doubled or tripled the number of people who worked on the film, it would still be far less than what you see today. This was like a special effects heavy film. It wasn't, computer effects, obviously, but there's puppets and animated stuff, and they're building miniatures and shooting all these things. And the film only cost $19 million back then, which works out today to about 60, approximately, with ever crushing inflation. And then it made like $300 million back then in its summer box office, which is almost like $1 billion today. It's like $900 million or something back then. And we see the same thing a lot with games. Like, there's hyper inflated. I know there's a lot of details and effects and deep programming and things that go into these things, but I just feel like they're between movies. Well, you look at like some of the successful movies recently, right? There's this Obsession movie people are talking about. It was made for almost nothing, and it's made like 100 times its budget back. And it increased the number of people watching it the week after it came out. And it's not. I don't think it's an effects based movie, but it's still like we're talking about. Or it was less saturated. Like, I remember even as a kid in the '90s or in the '80s, a movie would be in the theater for like more than a year. It could be in the main theater for like 8 or 9 months sometimes, and then we hit the dollar theaters, the cheap theaters, and it could stay in there for a lot longer. Um, I like these changes I made back here, so I'm very proud of myself. Pat, 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 pat. On the head. Yeah, but they put out so many movies now. Like, every weekend, there's like a ton of new movies, and a lot of them, like, they don't do very well. And then they've killed a lot of their profits by not um going, not having like rentals and DVDs and all that stuff. It just seems like the fixation on streaming is hurting them a lot. And I don't want movies to die. I rather like them. You know, I like the theater experience. You know, like go to the theater now, like, you know, they got these crazy comfy chairs and I never buy the snacks. I'm trying to lose weight, not put it on. But yeah, but there's a ton of just like junk, right? Gets put out. It's like, yeah, who's looking forward to the next Marvel movie, right? The what was it Avengers Doomsday or whatever? It's like, you know, does anybody really want that movie? You know, Robert Downey Jr. is back, but as somebody else. Um, yeah, kind of. This is all a lot. If you scroll back, you'd see this is a lot was a lot darker. And I think I was either gonna like cut the contrast on her down a lot, um, to make her kind of pop a little bit more, like get rid of some of these super dark blacks. But I was like, well, you know, maybe if I just like push this back and push this back a little bit, then the rest of this will kind of pull forward. So, um, but you know, I look at like Closer Encounters of the Third Kind, and say you know they were to stick with mostly doing practical effects today, which you know, you could do, even if they were to like to double or triple their budget for like some of their puppets and things like that, just the animatronics of it, animatronic, animatronics. If I can say that word right. Like even if they were to significantly bump up that budget, it would still be a lot cheaper than you know, like a major Star Wars movie. Like what do they spend on? I think the announced budget for that Mandalorian movie was like 160, 170 million or something like that is what they spent on it. There's a lot of practical stuff in there too, which I think is good. Like they've got some stop motion stuff in there, lots of course puppets and costumes and sets. Yeah, it definitely pops a lot more getting that these trees knocked back. Yeah, it seems like yeah, like people I keep hearing like, well, you know, it's all this CGI. It costs a lot. Like it does. It's like, well, you know, it's like people like keep talking about AI being more efficient, right, or costing less, and they're starting to find out that no, that's not true. Which should have been obvious. It's like you know, like I think there's like the news story about Uber where they're and there's some other companies that have done it too, but they're burning through their token budgets at like an insane rate of just expenditure. And what they're finding is, of course, that it's a slot machine, right? So you don't know exactly what you'll get coming out of it. And then you have to fix it, right? So if you get something, maybe it kind of works, but then you have to go and figure out like why it's not exactly working the way you want it to. And if you use rope, you know, if you use more AI to figure that out, then you're dumping more tokens in. You're hoping you'll get it right. Um, I think that they're doing that a lot with like the CGI stuff. We're like, well, you know, we can kind of shoot stuff and then we can fix it later with compositing and CGI and these other things rather than like just planning on doing it correctly right at the beginning. It's like if you read about or listen to people talk about Spielberg, like he'll show up on a set and he'll just like tell people where to put the camera and how to move it around. And he does like these insane transitions in his shows where it's like I was when the Close Encounters I was watching that again, paying attention to that. And there's a scene where uh, Dreyfus's character, the dad, he's playing with his kids, and it shifts from that to him. You know, like it's all I think it's all in one shot too, or mostly in one shot. But he shifts from that to you know playing with his kids, his wife chasing the kids off, telling them to you know stop bothering him or whatever, and then you see him spraying the shaving cream into his hand, and then he like has a realization, but they shift the shot with his face is all lit up to. He turns to the side, his face goes into shadow, and the thing is lit up in his hand. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, with the thing the Pope put out, right? That'd be funny. If it falls apart over like religious exemptions at work. Um, that would be really really funny. That'd be some interesting lawsuits, right? Following up on that, if people got fired over it. Um, but but yeah, like it's like one of the things like Spielberg are really great directors. Like when they come in on a set, they've got it all like figured out in their head, like they've planned ahead. And there was a certain kind of economy to their action in these older movies, especially when they're shooting on film, where you had to get it right? You couldn't like take 1,000 different shots and hopefully kind of splice it together later on. You had to get it right the first time, or pretty right the first time, and then do a few takes so you had something to work with. But you kind of had to know what you were doing and like really think about it. And with digital and CGI and all that, you can kind of skip that, and I think it kind of gets in the way of the quality of things. Um, that it actually harms it. People think of it being more efficient, because okay, you can get all this stuff and it's a lot cheaper, per shot, right? You can take more shots for less money. Um, but it's like a lot of like these shows where like it's clear like that they didn't plan enough in the writing phases or something like that, where um, and they're hoping to fix it up later or assemble the film from pieces later on. And, there's definitely been good movies that have been made that way, like the original Star Wars film was done that way, where his I forget George Lucas's wife at the time, she's the one that kind of fixed it in the editing process. But I look at a lot of stuff, it's like, well, maybe if people just like spent a little more time thinking about what they're doing. They still got it, or are they different? It varies. Like I've taught at a bunch of different schools, and there's definitely different attitudes. Like I'm not speaking individually about any one person, but like when I was at Ringling down in Florida, I do feel like the students there were, as a group, a lot more focused on their professional outcomes. Like you would just tell them to do things, and they would do things. They would like to know maybe why. It's always good to have a good reason why. Um, but I have noticed that like in my current school, and it's not, again, not true of everybody. There's lots of really hardworking students, but I have noticed kind of I call it, because I think ambivalence is too strong of a word. I think it's more of like a casualness to their interest into how they pursue their degree. Like I had a student write like a pretty intense student review last fall. I must have really upset her. I think I knew exactly who it was because she was really looking forward to the class, and by the end she wasn't bringing in her work progress, and that's usually a pretty good sign that the students are really upset with you. Um, but but she had made this whole thing, because I commented to students like that. They're at some point we were talking, and like I said, well, school really should be like your like essentially your top priority, right? It should be like your job is your schooling first above any other kind of employment or any other kind of activity. So I've definitely seen students like get in the way of themselves in the past, where like they've like I had a student, his main goal was paying for his car, and it wasn't like a nice car or an expensive car. It was like a clunker, but he was more worried about like making sure he was paying for his car than he was his, working on his schoolwork, which is a problem. So, so I have seen what I call it casualness, and again, it's not universal, but I definitely see it a lot in some of the students I have had here, where they kind of like school and their professional development. It's not their main thing that they're working on, which it's up to them. That's fine, but it's really hard to become a professional artist if you're just going to be kind of halfway about pursuing it. You're not going to get very far, and you're never going to have the same amount of time to focus on your development once you're out of school. Like it's a lot harder to find the time to work on your skills and your portfolio, because if you're working full time doing something, maybe not art but something, um that's that's just going to get in your way if you're not like, if this isn't like your top priority. I'm not saying not to call mom on Christmas or whatever, but it takes a lot of work and time and practice to get good enough to be a pro at art. And I think a lot of students are kind of overestimating the opportunities that they're going to have if they're not really good. Oh yeah, the new Ferrari. Things a That's a real piece of work, right? So yeah, I think the other thing I've seen too, of course, has been a big transition to from students like being interested in manga and anime to like being really big into fan art. And I think that's kind of a mistake. There's nothing wrong with fan art per se. Um, I think there's definitely a place for it, but I do see a lot of students like really fixated on doing fan art. Um, but I do have like a former student from a long time ago. He does actually really well doing kind of his own version of fan art. Jed Henry, he does these ukiyo style woodblock prints as fan art. He designs them, and then he has like a studio in Japan that he works with really closely that actually make them for him. Um, but I would say, the casualness, I think, is the thing that concerns me. Because one of the things with students is like they don't realize that, while they're students, they'll never have, again, I mentioned the time um and that to focus, but they also will never have that much energy. While you're young, it's a lot harder to like pull. It's hard enough to pull in an all nighter, but to to do that consistently as a student is really really much easier when you're young, so you can try and get things done to obsess over your improvement. And again, it's not everybody's this way. It's just something I see as like a trend, that there's this general sort of casualness. I don't. Again, ambivalence is too strong a word, like I was saying, because it implies they don't care. I think they do think they care, um, but that's something I have seen. Maybe it's just like old man me, shouting at the clouds for my university students. Um, but I remember I was down at Ringling, just a couple of years ago, and I would see students, in the labs, at 10 o'clock at night. I'd stop in there to scan something or whatever, hang up some pictures. And I'd see students there, in the evenings, uh, packing in the labs and working on their projects and knocking stuff out of the park. And I think it's like it's definitely a cultural difference at the school. Yeah, again, it's hard to see that stuff when you're young, though, right? Like you don't understand that that's the opportunity, and so sometimes people like. There's a really great artist I know, really fantastic draftsman, and he said he was that way in school too, but once he got out of school, he kind of woke up and recognized that he wasn't performing like he should be for the kinds of things he loves to do, and he locked in and got really really good. Evan Kitson, he's a really great draftsman, but but yeah, he said he was really lazy student. I think he was graphic design student, but yeah, yeah, yeah. But again, you can, so again, the university thing can be a bit of uh, roulette wheel, right, for studying art, depending on where you happen to go. Because a lot of, when you're young, you don't really know enough to actually be that selective about who your teachers are. Um, Especially when you're first getting into school, like as a freshman, you don't always know like who's going to be your teacher and why that matters and who they are and what different teachers' strengths are, what their weaknesses are. Like there's things I'm not as good as teaching as other things. I think um, I can wing it with certain things. Like last fall with acrylic, like I was kind of winging it a bit in the class. But I always say you just have to be like 10% better than your students at things because that's such a big gulf for them to overcome usually. But I feel like right now I could be wiping the floor with them with the things that I'm doing now, relatively speaking. Um, Nothing genius level, but yeah, I'm much happier with this stuff than I was before. So, um, but um, what was I gonna say? Yeah, but so that's where I get concerned. It's like it's like I don't want people to feel bad or hurt themselves or ruin their psychology or whatever. If they've got specific medical situations. So I get a lot of those. I'm really surprised by like the students that get like extra absences for some reason from the school. Which it's like the accommodation stuff is supposed to grant access. Like that's what it's for. Is like so in case someone has a physical or mental disability, it lets them get more access information, like having like a note taker or something in class, or they've got some kind of medical condition to have a snack or whatever. To But I'm seeing stuff like extra absences or more time on projects and things like that. And I'm like, well, if timeliness is part of, the education, or if showing up to class is part of the education, aren't you just granting them permission to not have access? And then they look at me like I'm a silly person. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's silly. What are you talking about? I'm like, well, Seems like that's what you're doing to them. What do I know, right? I'm just the teacher. I just have to deal with the situation in the classroom where, I have students who are, some of who are missing too much class, and therefore, not getting the benefit of being in class. So I like to tell a story where I failed a student a long time ago because she had a baby in the middle of the semester, and she disappeared for like 5 weeks in the middle of the semester and wanted to come back and like finish everything up. And I looked at her, I was like, congratulations, but I guess you'll be taking this class again later. Like, what are you thinking? Like it wasn't like a surprise baby. She knew it was coming. She was, as they say, very pregnant, for that first part of the semester. And, you know, I'm happy she had a child and congratulations and all that, but, it's a portrait life painting class. And I don't know how you make that up. She seemed to think that that was a reasonable request, that she disappear for, a third of the semester and be able to just like pick things back up. And it's like, no, that's not really gonna work very well for you here. But congratulations, Yeah, that's what you would think, or at least just like, if she knew the baby was happening that semester and she felt like she'd be able to come back, the next one to be ready to roll. Like, yeah, you just like take it, you just take a leave for a semester or two and come back ready to roll. Your baby's stable and happy and healthy, and you know that's that seems like that would be the plan, right? That you would have as a reasonable person. She's also kind of like a non-traditional student, so she was a little bit older. We call our students who are a little bit older, we call it the non-traditional students. But I mean, this was a very, very, very long time ago. I don't I can't remember her name. It's at a different school, like in 2010 or 2000, like, yeah, 10 or 11, maybe 12, maybe probably 11. That'd be it was a fall semester. I had another student at that school. He freaked out at me during our final critique. So back then, I used to give grades while we were having our final critique one on one with the students, and partially because of him, I don't do that anymore. Um, but he was a kind of a scholarship student, very religious guy, and he uh, had missed some class, but he was like within the safe range. And then he was told me like, "Well, I've got this family vacation where my parents are taking us on during this like entire week of classes, which would take him over the limit." And I was like, maybe I'll let it slide. Because I thought he was actually gonna be back a day earlier than he ended up being back, kind of a thing. And then, like he did his final wrong. Like, well, I thought it would be better to do it this way, and I'm like, well, that's not the project. And he like started yelling and screaming at me, that he was gonna go to the blah 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 to get me in trouble, etc. And my department chair, I was adjunct then, so the guy who's full time faculty member came in and he was like, "What's going on in here?" Because the guy was like screaming at me. Um, it isn't great, have somebody screaming at you. It was like you'd done done the project wrong, and he'd missed too much class. I was like, I don't know. So there's always crazy people out there. make things hard on themselves and then transfer that to other people. Um, um, so, again, 99.99% of my students are great. Yeah, they've been really great. There's these kind of exceptional ones that kind of stick out once in a while who make you be like, yeah. I had an incident this last semester with a student that I probably can't talk about yet. But it was just like left me quite shocked about what happened and the response. But it's like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with this kind of person and the department itself. Yeah, again, 99.9% of students are great. They work hard. They want to do well. Again, the casualness, I think, is a more common thing. But again, it's not everybody. I just noticed like it's more common here than I've seen in a while. And we were talking about a department meeting, and like one of our faculty, he's older guy, and he has his son is graduating from college this semester, and he's going out to see him. And he noticed, that when he's been out there, that he doesn't see what we are seeing in our department in terms of like how students are casual with their work. And my attitude about that kind of thing is always, well, if there's like a universal thing that we're seeing with students, maybe it's not the students that were the problem. Maybe it's institutional. Maybe it's something we're doing as a department or as a school or as a university that we need to change in the culture of our program. That and I think that's more really where the focus should be for us. There's all kinds of problems in the world, right? Could complain about them all day long here. But I can't really do anything about those things out there. But I can look at the things that I can do for myself and the things that I can improve locally and in my own situation. And actually, I wrote a blog post about this on my teaching site, on my Myers Professor site. But I saw this video going around of Craig McCracken when he was 24 years old. So Craig, he's the creator of the Powerpuff Girls, right? And this video is from like 1995, and he's a very very young guy, 24 years old, and he's working on a short as like a pitch for the Powerpuff Girls, being interviewed or something. He's working at Cartoon Network, which was new at the time. It's back when Dexter's Laboratory came out, and soon after was like Samurai Jack, among other things. And but the posts were saying basically, I see people reposting it and complaining that no one gives them the same opportunities now that Craig had back then. They've been working in the industry for X number of years, or they just got out of school and they can't get a job, or this or that problem. And it kind of upset me because I was like, what are you talking about? Opportunities? Like back then when Craig was, in Cartoon Network, I don't know his story exactly, you know, But I can guarantee it was a lot harder to do what he did back then than it is now. You know, it's like now they've got the internet, which he didn't have access to. They didn't have social media. There was no YouTube. There was, you know, nobody had email in 19. Very few people had email in 1995. You know, and like I didn't get internet access until much later, like a few years later. But like for, you know, to get noticed, to like see, have someone look at your portfolio, get looked at your pitch, you know, get you a show. It required like a special set of circumstances. Like Cartoon Network was new back then, and they needed content that was original. Like they didn't have Disney, they didn't have Warner Brothers, they didn't have all these resources these major studios had access to, and they needed original content. And so it was definitely, yeah, Johnny Bravo, fantastic hair, the famous nude episode, right, where he's running around town naked, or the one where he turns into a girl, which is really funny. But um, but yeah, people are like, well, you know, I don't tell me to go on YouTube and make a video because it will never get seen by anybody. It's like, but you know, like that's like probably your best chance to get seen. Like I'm sure, like if Craig was, you know, 24 today, he'd have like a YouTube channel that was really popular, doing shorts or, you know, clips of funny videos or telling little stories or whatever. People do that. Um, or, you know, on Instagram or Twitter, or whatever people are looking at these days. Um, and it's not to say we don't have our own challenges. This is that you like he's doing this on paper and sell sheets, and you know, just like to say that he had an easier time is just completely insane. Um, like it's just like the most bizarre historical like misunderstanding of what was going on then and what's possible now. Like you want to put yourself in front of an audience, like you want to make a cartoon. Well, the software is basically free, right? As long as you have a computer, like you can put together an animation on, you know, on your iPad. For crying out loud. You can um, you know, even if you're paying for an Adobe subscription, that's, you know, well, it costs, you know, what, 60, $70 a month. Um, if you're going to use that, and there's cheaper options out there than that even, but you're going to use that, so, you know, like that's relatively a nominal cost compared to, you know, a bunch of sell sheets and flying out to California to pitch to somebody. So the software, the delivery, you know, the distribution is basically free. And they're complaining that they're not going to get some corporate job that they're going to sit and complain about sucking the whole time they're there anyway. Um, it was just a basic demonstration of, yeah, it's a lot easier to use too these days. Like anyone can sit down and learn the essentials. You don't necessarily need a class necessarily. Like you watch some YouTube videos from somebody and they'll show you how to use After Effects or um, Procreate Dreams or whatever, you know, app you want to use to animate with. Adobe Animate, right? Still pretty popular. Like there was a bit of a controversy with that, where Adobe was trying to kill off that program. Um, but yeah, but it's like what was interesting to me was like it was a clear example of what's called master-slave morality, which is a classic kind of Nietzschean uh, philosophical kind of analysis of human behavior, psychological, philosophical analysis of human behavior. And basically, it's the idea is like masters are people that go out and do things. Like they make their own thing. They act independently. They don't wait around for permission. You know, they are willful actors within the world. And slaves are basically people who sit around waiting for other people to tell them what to do. And they are full of resentment and malice towards that go out and do things in the world. He wasn't saying that every person that like acts in the world that way is a good person. He's just saying like these are people that go out and they do things. Um, but yeah, the slave one though that's interesting. These are people that sit around griping about other people and the things that the opportunities they're not getting because of what other people are doing. And that's what I was seeing with all these Twitter posts. So I screen capped a bunch of them and I wrote a little thing up on my blog over on the teaching site. So I haven't really done like an opinion blog like that before, but I was just looking at this like, this is so terrible. Like, what is wrong with these people? Like, who taught them, or what put them in this situation? They felt this way. That's the same thing like we're talking about these students, right? So we're seeing this kind of casualness in the students. Maybe that's a department thing. We have certain limitations on who we can take. So basically, well, the limitation is really we have to take everybody. So we don't have uh, like a portfolio requirement to get into our department. We do have like a grade level, but they want us taking everybody in, which I think is part of the problem. Like, but that's something we can't do anything about that, right? So to fixate on that as an issue beyond some of the little tweaks we can kind of do as a department, I think is a mistake. So what we can do though is we could like make our classes harder, right? And say have a certain acceptable fail rate or something like that. 5% or 10% of students, or just have or even more. Would be even better than that. Would just be a culture of achievement. Yeah. So if they get into the first year program, which is independent of us, then we have to basically take them, unless they have like really bad grades. And so, yeah, we don't have like when I went to school, my school, we had a multi-tier portfolio review process that actually even included graduation. Um, so, like to get into the art program, you had to pass a portfolio review to get in the first year. And then you had to pass another one to get into the second year of the major. And then there was another one at the end of that second year where you were allowed to pursue the BFA of that major. And then there was one more at graduation where your portfolio had to be of sufficient quality to graduate. And students would fail that one. Like they wouldn't necessarily come back to school to finish it, but they would rework their portfolio and then get it approved later on. Like I met some people like that who had gone to my school and hadn't passed that final portfolio review for their senior project. And they had to come back, a year or two later to get it reviewed. Um, and so we were all very highly motivated, like in my program. Like we were working long hours and there late at night and working hard. And it was like a strong culture built in because of that competitive aspect to it. And they only would let 20 students into that junior level of the program. You could still get a BA, but you couldn't get the BFA. And the BFA came with certain perks like studio space. There were certain classes that were only available to the BFA students. And again, but the thing is, like, I failed my first review going into the sophomore year. So at the end of my freshman year, I actually failed it. You could reapply a few more times, so I reapplied later that year and got in into the summer. But and they were right to not pass me. It wasn't like a cruel thing or whatever. Like I wasn't aware of the deficiencies in my portfolio. I thought I was doing really well, but that failure made me realize for exactly where I was at. Um, but again, but I think there's things we can do within our department to make it, to kind of fix some of those problems I've mentioned, like just having an attitude of certain kinds of excellence. Maybe certain common standards to a certain degree, um, which I think would also be helpful. Um, so I so I think there's certain things we can do. Like we had a student actually. I kind of did a push for department to start having us submit to Society of Illustrators student competition this year, and it wasn't one of my students, but one of the other teachers' students. They had a piece like win one of the really big scholarships, like a $5,000 scholarship from the Society of Illustrators, which is really exciting to see. And I think stuff like that helps. We also have like a bit of a scholarship for taking students out to Lightbox in the fall. Um, so I think stuff like that helps a lot. I think that's the standard of excellence, as long as it looks like a homeless encampment, right? A pile of trash. That's a different department, though. I'm in the communication arts department, just kind of the commercial art illustration-y department. What time is it? 9 o'clock. I probably should stop here. Paint's getting sticky anyway. Paint. But I think that's a good progress. I think knocking this stuff back made a big difference, and it's just a matter of going and cleaning up some of these edges in here. Definitely feels a lot better. Helps just let your painting sit on the shelf for a month, right? Been too long. Yeah, I appreciate everybody coming in. I'm probably might be back in the evening tomorrow. I'm trying to really again finish up a bunch of this stuff, so I've just been getting up in the morning and working on my art professor thing. And boy, you haven't been over there. Is like free course over there for it's like has a bunch of cool samples of stuff and an old project I did a long time ago when I first started it that I did as like a 6-part series of digital painting. But anyway, we'll talk to you all later. Get the dog his broccoli.